I trust you very well. I'm doing well, and I'd like to speak to you today regarding looking at your present condition. Sometimes we look at our own conditions and tend to blame others. For our own condition, we tend to blame others for underachieving, and sometimes we tend to blame others for things that we feel that been directed to us unjustly, which maybe the former might be right, it might be because you've underachieved, because you were hindered by somebody from achieving that which you could have achieved, and that could have made you or enabled you to get into that course or that qualification that you wanted, and you just feel that life has been rather unfair on you. Nevertheless, the question that we might ask tonight is that, how do we then address our own conditions? Fair enough, and I sympathize with the fact that that has happened. How do we then correct it? How do we get to a position whereby that situation can be used towards your own advantage and benefit now? Now, when we fail to admit our faults, sometimes the faults become so vivid, or they become so clear that everybody will begin to see that we are at fault. The fact that you feel left out of life does not mean that things should remain that way. You've got to understand that situation and be able to move on. Don't wait until your fault becomes so obvious, or where life has cheated you becomes so obvious that you've been cheated by life and you end up carrying that on your shoulders. I believe that we can tonight look at ourselves and see how we can adjust ourselves to be able to improve in areas concerning us, because obviously you will know that we've got no control over things that are not within our radius, or something that we cannot change, or we've got no control. There is no reason why we should spend most of our time thinking about that, because we obviously have got no control over that. But by and large, if you go into the book of Proverbs chapter 7, the Bible says, "My son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee. Keep my commandments and live. And my law is the apple of thine eye. Bind them upon thy fingers, write them upon the table of thine heart." Now, I'd like to advise you, as it were, that, believe it or not, take it or leave it, the situation is as it is, and we need to correct it one way or the other. We need to find a way where we can see to it that we get you back on track. But how can we get you back on track unless you be willing to see where you've been cheated in life? But the most dangerous and detrimental thing you can do in your own life is to start blaming others for your present condition, or start blaming others for what you lack. Well and truly we can, and there is no reason why we shouldn't, but I believe that if we dwell on that blaming mode, we will not get anywhere in life. And for us to get far in life, the only thing that we can do is to find ways in how we can correct that and ensure that we get back to life the way that we would have done had it been we were not cheated. Sometimes we've got to refuse, we have to admit that we have done wrong in the past. You know, sometimes it is the human mind not to want to admit that things have gone wrong somewhere, somehow. And I'd like to encourage somebody out there that there is nothing wrong in making a mistake, provided you don't deliberately make a mistake, if you get my point. If you've made a mistake, don't feel shy to admit that I think I've gone wrong here, and there is a way that I can correct it, and the way that I can correct it is by getting help from different individuals. And because if you rather refuse to admit that you've made a mistake, what tends to happen is that you will move around a vicious circle and block your way to a great future. I believe that we can always clean our minds. We can always start afresh. I believe that garbage in gives garbage out. If your mind is loaded with a lot of past upsetments or past anger, you will not be able to fill your mind with new ideas. You will not be able to fill up your mind with what we can say brilliant stuff, because your mind is just loaded with things that you don't really need at this present time, because by you dwelling on what is cheated you in life, you're not doing yourself any favors, because that will bring in the spirit of resentment. But sometimes we make the mistake whereby we find ourselves being so rushes about our faults, until the faults become what everybody can see. Everybody begins to take pity on you because you lacked an opportunity somewhere. I sympathize with that fact, and I'm not speaking for the sake of speaking or talking for the sake of putting you down, but I believe that, of course, we've all been cheated in life, but is it not wise that we should dust ourselves and move on and find places that can accept our applications and find places that can accept us as who we are? And sometimes we violate commandments that are critical to our way of life at this present dispensation. Sometimes we violate laws that, if they are violated, or if violated, they can put us in a position whereby nothing will seem to go right for us. That is why it is very critical that we keep commandments that are given unto us. If you are able to keep commandments, because there are commands in every area of our lives that we've got to monitor not to abuse. There are commands in every area of our lives that we monitor not to neglect, such as punctuality, such as keeping abreast by reading, such as keeping abreast with relevant information with anything that concerns you. If you are a law student, obviously you know that you've got to keep reading law books to keep up to date with the acts and the laws of the land. And if you are a theologian, you have to keep reading the law of God that you will need in critical times. Should any scenario or should any situation strike, you'll be able to quote the very same law of God to speak back to the situation. Now, therefore, we've got to ensure that our problems or our present condition is not visible to everybody else to take pity on us, but we learn from it and we take it to the point whereby we can correct it and learn from it. Sometimes we allow situations to go on and on until we get forced by nature or by life that things have got to be re-examined, because there are certain things that are hidden away in the back of your mind that you've just refused to let go, or you've just refused to deal with, and so much so that they've somehow festered a turmoil, and you've allowed it to grow to an extent that you cannot really deal with it no more. But I believe that you can still get in touch with the good side of you and learn to dismiss every hurting past experience and see to it that you can rise again and begin to be who you are meant to be and do what you are meant to be doing. I believe that there is a vast majority of men and women of color that have been cheated in life, but there again, how do we correct that? How do we get to a position whereby we get things right, we begin to improve again? Now, one thing you've got to understand is that nobody here in life can respond to your situation but you. Your situation will arise that only you can respond to it and deal with it so much better that you can eradicate the entire blockage or the totality of the problem that arises at that particular point in time. And how you respond to that situation is very critical to the next 30 years to come, counting from when you respond to it of your life. The way that you deal with problems is rather important, because when problems come again to hit you in the future, the very same method that you use to deal with past problems is the very method that you can deploy to ensure that you get that problem resolved over and done with, over and out and done with it, so that it's not a linger on, it's not a prolonged matter. Therefore, what I believe you can do tonight is that know what to do when what strikes you. But obviously, if you had a problem yesterday, you don't expect to be still dealing with the very same problem today. You want the problem to be dealt with so that it's all over and out. And that is what we've got to do. But it is your responsibility to make a decision that is conducive to you and regarding what is important to you. What is important to you right now? How would you like the world to view you? How would you like your friends to know you to be? Or when you are dead and gone, what would you like people to think that you made an impression here, or you made an impression there, and you were able to change matters? I'm delighted that sometimes we can be able to take time and begin to reflect on things that affect us. But what I want you to know is that it is critical that you should take time and look at commandments that are important to you. Not that the rest will not be important to you, but what commandments or what laws or what regulations should you violate will affect the rest of the next 30 years of your life. And if you were to change that and see to it that you will become a happy person, I don't see why you should wait for tomorrow for you to change that, because it's something that is, if changed, it can make your life very easy to follow and very easy for people to understand you. Not that we live to be understood by people that shouldn't even try to understand us, but it is important that the impression that you leave on people is not an impression that will backfire or be a public relations disaster in your own life. You want everybody to know that you're a good guy and you want to remain genuine to the personality that you project or that people read about your life. You want to remain honest and genuine with that. But how long would you be blaming others for your own life's condition? Because by so doing, you would be digging a deep grave for your own soul. I've been to places whereby I've had people that will try by all means to dig a grave for their own lifestyles that they live, just determined that many years will they live in life going on like this. Unless they change, then they will receive favor. Sometimes there are lifestyles that we adopt that block favors, or there are lifestyles that we adopt that hinder our own progress in life. And it is then that we've got to realize that how long would we go on hating ourselves, or how long should we go on blocking our own blessings? But the writer of the book of Proverbs says, "My son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee." Sometimes there are words that people speak into our lives, and they just make such an impact on us that everything we do seems to revolve on those words. Most probably when we were younger, we had people speaking negative words into our lives, and we have since remembered them here, there too. But I believe that the words of God are much more pure than words of man. What God has said regarding us, it's something that can stand eternally. But words of man could have been said yesterday and they affected us in one way or the other. But the question that I might want to point out to you today is that why should we therefore allow those words to limit our progress in life? Why should we allow other people to speak into our lives to hinder us from obtaining favor from certain positions in life or from certain individuals? Why should anger be the order of our day? Sometimes we've got to let go and let God be. Because the Bible says, "My son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee." Well and truly, there are times whereby we've neglected certain commandments that have been spoken, and if and when we were to get back to those commandments that we know we should have kept and go back and rehearse them like Ezra did, I think it's in the book of Nehemiah chapter 8, whereby he had to read back the laws of the Lord in the people's ears so that they could understand what the law of God means. And there are times whereby if we were to look around, there's a vast majority of us that need to go back and begin to rehearse the law of God, because we have allowed ourselves to blame others for our own conditions. Our life's conditions mean that we've got to keep blaming others. We've got to keep blaming so and so for doing this and that to us. But if we remain in that position, we will never grow. Well and truly, it is important to blame people if need be. But there again, you're going to ask yourself the question that how long will I remain in that particular position? How long will I remain in that state of mind whereby I find somebody who's responsible for my lack? How and when am I going to improve if I don't learn to penalize myself and begin to bring self-discipline into my own life? Now, therefore, you've got to understand that for such to happen, you've got to know when it is time to keep certain commandments, when it is time to revise certain words that can inspire you, that can stir up your spirit into getting into that place whereby you can achieve excellence. And believe it or not, Daniel was granted with that spirit of excellency, and he kept on brushing himself. He kept on improving his own lifestyle. But now, why not work on that? Why not find a situation whereby you can know what your potential is and begin to concentrate on it and strike back and begin to speak back to that which is holding you back, and begin to determine that in the future when I do this, I will avoid such a problem and I will not make such a mistake ever again, because I would have learned, or by now I have already learned. And such there's a saying that I think it goes like, you cannot step in the same river twice. If you enter in one river in the first river by mistake, or in some certain river by mistake, you cannot afford to enter on that very same river again and begin to blame others for your own mistakes. Now, your present condition determines or forces you to change. If and when it does, don't change something that does not need changing. But if it needs changing, go right back into it and change it, so that you can learn from it, or you can feel that at least I can still consider myself to be a human being, because I can feel guilty when I've done something wrong, or when I've spoken a wrong word, or when my attitude was just not what was conducive for the time and place. You know, sometimes you got to look at yourself and say, when last was I able to go back and apologize if I've said something or if I've done something wrong? Now, therefore, I believe that we can work our way around improving our own personalities, or improving our own characters, that we may get far in life. Now, what is your present condition? What does it determine? What does it say about you? Or what does it say about the people that you so very much wish they could change and become good and better citizens? Sometimes we get so hindered, or we get so blocked by the words of our own mouth. Now, the writer of the book of Proverbs says, "Thou art snared with the words of thy mouth, thou art taken with the words of your mouth." The words that you speak are the words that can promote you, or they are the very same words that can put you back or put you down. I believe majority of us have been put down by people that we trusted, or by people that we looked up to, and we thought they could do so much to promote our interests, but discovered that in the long run they've promoted their own interest above our interest. But there again, what do we do at such a time as that? Do we then sit down and begin to nurse our own wounds? Of course not. We don't look at that, because our present condition, or our right there and then mood in life will mean that there is somebody who owes us so much in life, and therefore we can't move on until they come back and get it right. Get it right yourself. Get out of your own situations. Stop this pity party that you've been entertaining for such a long time, and begin to find ways and means of how you can get back on life, and begin to see to it that you do that which is expected of you. Sometimes we go on because we feel that just by criticizing other people we will just go very far. But don't let the words of your own mouth become a snare into your own future, because by being abrasive, or by being unpleasant, that will not change your current situation. But if you change the way that you deal with people, or the way that you respond to certain demands in life, I believe that you will become a bigger and better person in the future, because you would have definitely learned from your own mistakes. So now, therefore, the most important thing that man must appreciate is, or that must learn to do, is to make or select a few commandments, or remember a few words spoken rightly so in the scripture, that we can recite and begin to follow through in every day of our lives, that we will avoid breaking our own promises or our own regulations, because you're no longer a man if you can make principles and violate the very same principles that you have made, that you've taken into consideration that these are the principles that will guide your life. What are your values? What do you value so much? Look at that which you value, that if it were to be taken away from you, you will feel so very upset about. And look at the ways that you were able to achieve that. Valuables are our valuables, and we always want to ensure that they remain with us. But what I want us to remember here today is that we've got to make sure that we don't get to this position whereby the mistake we've made remain with us permanently. Mistakes we've made, yes, but why should we be defined by the mistakes that we've made in the future? Why should people define you by that which you said yesterday? Maybe, yes, they can, but why not try and work around the fact that they will discover that you would have changed by the time they accuse you? Because you've got to understand that the accusers, the people that will just accuse the brethren, or the people that will accuse your personality. So why not take that and be able to strike back into their accusation? By the time they research and find out more about you, they will find that you are a better person then. So why should your faults speak louder than who you are? Every time people see you, they see your faults first, because you've never done anything to correct that very same mistake. Now, therefore, beloved, I believe that we can do so much in our own lives to change our own situations. I believe that we can so very much work hard on our attitudes. We can so very much work hard on areas whereby we lack, so that we will not be defined by such characteristics. Now, therefore, I believe and I know that in each and every individual there is a lot of good in us, or there is a lot of good in them. And I believe that if we're to look deep down and begin to concentrate on that and begin to work on that, we can well and truly get to become better individuals. Now, what is it that you need to improve on, or what is it that you need to work on so vehemently that people will begin to appreciate you for the change that you've made? Because believe it or not, life will appreciate you and life will applaud you for changes that you've made to contribute just to your own personal improvement. I believe that there is a lot of good in you that you actually don't know, that if you were to just be still and get some time on your own, take a pen and take a paper, write down your own commandments that you'll be so careful not to violate in the future. So, and there's nothing so painful like violating your own commandments and your own principles, that you'll find yourself in a situation where you shouldn't have been before, if you had been able to follow those commandments accurately or rightfully so. Now, I believe that there is a lot of good in you, and I believe in you. I believe you can change. I believe you can work hard in improving your present condition, because it's that I'm worried about, that we just get so comfortable in our own zone of lack, or maybe of, like sometimes we just lack information about what is happening in and around us, what is the current affairs, what is happening in the world, how can we get involved in our community, what voluntary services can we do to make sure that you help somebody who is in need, provided you can afford that, if it's in monetary terms. Just that comfort zone is not something that we should be content with. We've got to find something that we can do to ensure that, the norm is dealt with, or the situation is just not that satisfactory all the way with us. But the most important thing is to keep God's words, thereafter learning to lay up his own commandments with us. I believe that you can do that, and I believe that you can improve on that so much so that you can become a good and better citizen. Avoid blaming others for your present condition.